wholesome dragon trainer who lives in in the woods with his wizard uncle. So I don't know. This is just like a fun, like, I wasn't really sure about this book idea, like what can be like the main incident. But maybe like the woods ends up getting caught on fire and then the dragons are in danger or something, or maybe someone kidnaps his uncle, the dragon trainer's uncle or something like that, and then he needs to like use his dragons to help find him or something like that. But yeah, I thought this was a really cool idea, really like wholesome, very like vibey in a way, where it's like you can see the mushrooms and the dragons, especially with Fourth Wing, which is a very popular novel at the moment. But yeah, that's one of them. The second book idea is a sculptor who has the ability to sculpt ghosts, capturing their spirits. This seems really interesting, and I don't know, I was kind of like really intrigued with this idea because I have written actually a short story which includes a sculptor, and I think sculptors as artists are so interesting, and the fact that like, I don't know, maybe they can see ghosts, like this sculptor can see a ghost and sculpt, you know, the ghost and like their story, but also capture them and like harness them into the stone so that they kind of materialize into real life. And maybe that has a lot of, you know, sorts of problems, or maybe she falls in love with one of them. I don't know, maybe they can talk to her. Cool, fun things. The sculptor can be a guy as well, but I just kind of always imagined a really cool woman sculptor. Anyways, that's that idea. Princess who was trapped in a mirror. Of a princess looking into the mirror. You can't see her face, but like maybe she's trapped in the mirrors, and people think that she's lost when she's really just lost in her own castle. How cool would that be? And somehow she needs to get out, and maybe like someone ends up helping her, or she actually gets transported to a new place. Maybe because she gets forgotten, you know, she starts to disappear or something like that. Something, you know, it has like that sort of kingdom-esque vibe, but also like a little bit of like a mystery sort of thriller, like, oh, I don't know. Next up, we have a boy who falls in love with a shadow. I was gonna say something like to do with his own shadow, like maybe he befriends his own shadow, like, because I'm really inspired by Peter Pan and his relationship with his shadow, and his shadow like being like a mother to him sort of thing. It's so interesting to like research. I love Peter Pan, so like maybe something like that, but maybe he falls in love with like someone else's shadow, but not like the person who casts the shadow. I don't know, just like interesting thought like that. Like, I don't know, it seems like, again, like that sort of vibe I love, like my ghost story sort of novel, like that sort of vibe is exactly what I love. So a lot of these, a boy who talks to crows and is able to communicate with crows. I have such an interesting short story, kind of similar to this, to do with crows and birds. Okay, next up, a trained assassin is tasked with protecting a petty prince who turns out being an assassin himself. This is actually a book idea that I had a little bit while back, and a little photo just kind of sparked that. So I was kind of like, that seems so cool. Like, imagine like this assassin who's like, you know, and this is like in a cyberpunk sort of vibe where an assassin, yeah, is like what? I have to protect this petty stuck-up prince, but he does it for the money, you know, and yeah, he ends up like having to protect him from like the assassins in the sort of city. And they kind of like band together, maybe. I don't know, it just seems kind of intriguing. Next up, we have a rebellious witch who steals an ancient relic from her academy. The premise of the story, where like a cool witch, yeah, literally, I think she kind of like puts a curse on, or like stealing the relic. It was like a book of curses, no, a book of spells that ended up becoming curses because she ended up writing her own spell, which turned into a curse, which cursed everyone to forget her name. But for some reason, one boy from the academy remembers her name, so that's kind of like where the story started. But I'm like, I don't know. It wasn't the most pressing sort of book idea that I had. We have a hooded maiden who steals the eyes of her captors. So maybe this maiden is like someone who attracts people, attracts men, but she ends up stealing their eyes. I don't know. Seems like a very interesting sort of story. Very like more of a short story. I kind of get the vibe from, but she obviously steals them for a reason, a wholesome reason, I hope. Next up, a dark ancient Bean is saved by a little girl in the forest when she's led astray. I kind of saw this image of like a little girl like outreaching her hand to a like dark beast that kind of looked like a shadow sort of dragon. So how cool would it be? I love those relationships too, where it's like a huge beast with like such an innocent child. Creature is wanting to care for this innocent babe. So have two lovers with the powers of light and shadow, and they're banished from each other. So these two lovers are basically banished, maybe like heaven and hell, something like that. I was thinking of like shadow and like lightning and storm, some sort of elemental restriction. But light and darkness seems cool in like a dystopian world where it's all darkness or all lightness or something like that. And it's just like everything happened because of these two lovers, and they were somehow broken apart. The prince is running away from his marriage, only to meet the woman he was supposed to marry. A woman who happened to also be his assassin. How cool! Like, the prince runs away because he was about to marry a girl he didn't want to, but it turns out like that girl was supposed to marry him to kill him. And then he ends up running away, which is a good thing. But then maybe they like learn about each other. I don't know. So
it's called Gang Leader, and
like literally the title is cool.
Gang Leader. Yeah, but what inspired me actually was Peter Pan. I kind of based the characters kind of off like Peter Pan, because Peter Pan was a childhood kind of movie of mine, and Returning to Neverland, really, not the original, but Returning to Neverland, characteristics of Peter Pan and kind of like that story to that idea that I had.
Yeah.
Lead character Key is her name, and I really connect with her because I really want to show kind of she really relates to basically my childhood and how.
No, because Key is Peter Pan, right?
Yeah, so Key is based on Peter Pan, and then she has a side character called Steve. And
Steve.
I know Steve is such like a crazy name, but it's so funny at the same time.
We love Steve.
Yeah, just like calling the name Steve. It's just like so satisfying, but so funny at the same time.
And Steve is.
So Steve in the story is kind of like Tinkerbell, but their relationship is completely like platonic and completely kind of almost like annoying. Like I want the audience to just be like, ugh, what the heck?
Yeah.
Because she's essentially this gang. She's like part of like this kind of whole big gang. And how I've like pictured the story was basically there's two levels, like the normal how we're living, but then there's like the underground. The underground, which is kind of where she's like from, and her dad is the mob boss, which I call like the gang leader.